Hey folks, it's me, Stefan, or DM Bad Wrong Fun. The only host of Raw this week. Matt and a lot of other folks are heading out to GaryCon. Quite a big convention, so I hear. If you're getting ready to go do that, I hope you have a lot of fun this weekend. I am still holding down the fort, and so since when the cat's away, the mice will play. Matt is gone. So I thought I'd do another little solo show. The last one was like my MCC campaign path thing, and that was some good fun. A lot of people really enjoyed that. So I thought I'd, deviate. We're still going to be doing Raw and talking about some rules, but it's going to be a little bit looser. We're going to be talking about what the DCC core rulebook does as far as campaign settings go in the kind of implied world and how to craft like a small little campaign region. And I'm also stealing a little bit from what Brendan LaSalle does with his 9 towns thing. And it so it let's to start off, let's go to the book. So if we can bring up handout 0, we will start looking and see what it says about the known world. Oh, that's the wrong. I meant handout 1. What is that? Oh, so embarrassing. Handout 1. Take that down. Take that down. Oh, okay. All right. The known world. So what DCC says about it is, and this is page 314 of the core rules. It's larger than your characters will ever know. And if you have played a big campaign, you're going to get that feeling, or at least that's been my experience. And it's got some great bullet points here to keep things succinct. We'll get a little bit more in depth, but it says, almost all common folk live and die within a few miles of their birthplace. Overland travel is dangerous and expensive. Most peasants can only afford to walk. Cultural variation is measured in towns and valleys, not nations and continents. Most commoners are illiterate. Rare is the man who has traveled more than 20 miles from his home. There's no reliable long-range communication. So that's why I use the term campaign region and not campaign world earlier. Because your characters they're not going to get to know the whole world. They might know the region that they start in, one region over, and maybe they'll get lucky or unlucky and go to another world. But they're not going to be, visiting all 7 continents or however many continents your world has. And if you do things like me, you are not trying to make a whole world. You might be, though, and that can be a lot of fun, but making a whole world is something that probably involves multiple campaigns to truly explore. So, as far as a campaign region goes, one thing to consider is how that region connects. And that instantly gets into the discussion of travel. And the kind of general advice I've heard is that in a traditional medieval campaign, we have that medieval setting. Travel's going to be dangerous. Most towns are going to be 1 to 2 days away from each other, and there's going to be often some kind of connecting at night. Connecting by an inn or a farm, some kind of shelter you can take. That delves into the travel is dangerous. So when you are traveling, there's going to be brigands accosting wayfarers, knights harassing mercenaries, and of course the monsters that we all know and love. The travel is not going to be direct. We do not have a highway system. We have the path of desire that is made by what is the easiest way to get to the next place. Traveling through the valleys or over the hill, whatever is the easiest way is going to be the most well-trodden path. And so, not direct. The book says at low levels, you might be passengers on caravans instead of, owning horses and whatnot. Now, how that actually goes when you get through your funnel and come out with all your money, who knows? But just because you have money doesn't mean there's people who are willing to part with their goods. So someone might have enough horses for all the PCs to ride off. They may need those horses to plow the field, and you still need to catch a ride on a caravan. They're not going to sell their stuff either, because that's how that merchant makes its livelihood. So in their book, this is on page 307, says there might be other passengers. There's places to avoid. So with those other passengers, it says pilgrimages, visiting relatives, special errands. You can get some good rumors from them. and information about the greater world. Those places to avoid, it might be local tribes of lizardmen, or people charging fees for the highway, or haunted locations, of course. So that's something you want to keep in mind when you're crafting rumor tables, I think, and crafting kind of random encounters if you're doing random encounters in overland travel. The third point that is made on the travel in a medieval setting is it's just not easy. Um, you're not always going to get a place to sleep at night, not always a comfy bed along the way. So bring your bedrolls. It's gonna be ruddy modes, track lanes, footpath, dry stream beds, um, and that's where we go. I want to briefly talk about nine towns, though. So we've kind of delved into the subject of how we're getting, how we're traveling to everywhere and getting across our region. Nine towns is this thing I first became acquainted with in playing in a Brendan LaSalle game at a convention, and I've seen him do it online. If you watch the old Thousand Insane World stream or Blades Against Bandwidth stream on the Goodman Games YouTube channel, you'll see him mention nine towns every once in a while. And essentially, the concept is there's this small little region. You're from one of these nine towns, and there's eight more of them. Um, you may not live in the town, your local town, maybe a surrounding farmstead, but you probably do live in that town. And what that town exactly looks like, it can be decided by, well, the judge and the players, and often that starting adventure where perhaps your town gets destroyed or something like that. Have the PCs ever visited another town? From what the core rulebook says, probably not. But maybe, PC backgrounds, if they're a scribe, or some kind of mercenary, probably. Scribe, maybe, but mercenary seems like someone who's going to travel to and fro. That might mean that mercenary might also be a grand word for what they do. I'd say look at those backgrounds, do some luck checks. But in total, they've maybe visited one or two other towns, maybe. Um, Another thing about nine towns I've noticed from how Brendan does it is there's usually a kind of no heavy-handed leadership by a lord. Someone might claim the title of lord over the region, but that they're not super active, which is typical of kind of the traditional medieval setting. Um, but another thing we should talk about is getting to and from those towns. We kind of touched on the traveling. Hand out 3 security while traveling. This is just one page after the other one. Pages 308 and 309, security while traveling. It kind of, I think, kind of retreads the same ground, no pun intended, as the other ones. Camping is dangerous. Creatures roam at night. Brigands and savages. So you want to keep a watch. Travelers are going to plan their routes. They don't got GPS, folks, so they have to actually learn where they're going as best they can, at least, and try to find out what the safe locations are to stay the night before they go. They're going to want to find out there's a farmhouse or an inn along the road. That's where you want to stay. If you ride hard, you can get there. And but it also says, hey, that might be a bed of lice-ridden hay, boiled turnips for dinner. You don't know. It's not going to be good. Maybe you get in a castle, but maybe you're not really allowed in that castle. It depends on what your actions are and how welcoming that castle is. I'll say that handout is an abbreviated version of what's on pages 308 and 309. There's a lot more, so go and read it. And it does also note the castle is an important part. So in your campaign region, try to think about where you want to place your castle. And there should be one. Maybe it's an active castle and the Lord is there, and it's it's always going to be mysterious. But is it in current use, or is it some haunted castle? If I started another campaign tomorrow, I think my castle would be the kind of the creepy haunted one from Curse of the King's Spire. That's a great level 1 adventure. It's a long and deadly level 1 adventure, but that can be a great little castle to throw on the map. Security while traveling section also talks about that travelers, your common travelers, maybe not our adventurers, but common travelers are rare and they are brave. Um, and because they are the ones actually going to and fro, they're going to be the ones carrying a lot of rumors, and information can be a form of payment. So that exchange of what's going on over there and what's going on over here, that is a subject that should often be broached when you are meeting someone new and resting in their home, whether it be a hovel, an inn, or a castle. Information is gonna be exchanged, uh, or at very least you're gonna exchange it over a drink or a game of dice, something like that, or hopefully a good meal. But how do we actually make that region? I've just been shouting out the basics of what the DCC core rulebook actually says. So I've made some handouts, and I've put a lot of these same handouts. They're available right now if you go check out dragonpeakpublishing.substack.com. There's a post there that has the handouts that I'm about to show, and some random tables and adventures kind of categorized by region to make it easier for folks to create a campaign map of their own. If we look at handout 4, though, this is the steps that I took when I was creating 9 towns for a game of mine. I started by rolling 9 dice. Doesn't matter which dice. Maybe not D6. Maybe not those like D16s and D30s. You want them to actually stop on your piece of paper, but just throw them on a piece of paper. You mark them, just circle them, and those are going to represent your towns. And I made a nice list of relatively low level towns, adventures that have some kind of town in them. Some of them, Portal Under the Stars. It mentions the town, doesn't give any details, doesn't name it, so that's very vague. But Turney, that's the town from Love in the Age of Gong Farmers. It's a little detailed. It's got a bit more, say, the Black Sand Port from Shadow Under Devil's Reef. You actually get a map of that, so that's a good one. But basically, look at your region there and just go, okay, here are my 9 towns. You don't have to fill out all of them, but try to fill out what you can. And I'd say go with the adventures that you think you might like to run. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna be run, but go with what you can. And you can leave a few blanks so you can decide them later on. So you see how I did there. And if that handout is a little hard to see on Twitch, like I said, go over to the Substack post, and you'll be able to zoom in and see what I did. We'll also see a little bit more clear version of that in a moment. Once you have those maps down, or once you have the towns down, we can bring out handout 5. Next thing you want to do is connect your actual town. There's going to be some kind of road between them. In my little picture there, they're just straight lines. These might become, a little windy, but you also don't need to be overly concerned with how, perfect your map is to the actual terrain. Ancient maps or just old maps often weren't that accurate. So when you actually connect them, another good thing to think about is the geography that you create between these towns and the borders on the edges. What makes this region and not part of a greater one? I like to put, just it's a little unrealistic, but if you can put a sea on one side, some mountains on another, big swamp on another, and a forest on another, you've kind of got, for your 4 sides on your sheet of paper, you've got borders that make this region kind of unique to itself, separated from the rest of the world. And at this, you might want to revise your towns. You can kind of see on that handout there, I scratched out one of my towns. I scratched out Jernhokaz, which is the kind of a dwarven mining town from the adventure It Consumes. Because I was going, I wanted to have the sea over on the right, because that's where I put Portinel. Portnell, you can find that one in both They Serve Brandolin Red and The Corpse That Love Built. and it's a port. I mean, it's a port town, Port Nell. It's by the sea, and both those are Stephen Newton adventures. They connect to some other seaside nautical adventures out there. Feast of the Gobbler Witch, for one. So it needed to be by the sea if I'm having a sea. Well, if I'm having Port Nell, I guess I need to have a sea. And having a dwarven mining town is probably going to be in the hills. That's not going to be over near the sea. So on my little map, I put I moved it over to the left and had the mountains border the left or the west side. So you revise that. I then traced the work on a clean sheet of paper since I made some revisions, and I started drawing those borders with a little extra detail. And you can also see on my little map, it doesn't make it player safe, but for my sake, I wrote Herat, the name of town from Doom of the Savage Kings, so I put 66.5. Sturgeon, that's the town from Pit Stop number 2, so I wrote PS2. And Tourney, as I mentioned earlier, that one is the Valentine's Day adventure from 2022. So that's just, I wrote V22, shorthand for me being able to memorize it. If I wanted to be player facing, I can just hop in an editing program and erase that little bit and make it a little bit more player safe. With those borders that I also put on there, the swamps, I wanted to decide what was beyond those, just for my sake of being able to conceptualize, because those players are going to ask those questions. They're going to go, what's over there? Swamps. Well, what after that? The great city Punjar. And the mountains on the western side, well, if they go over there, I put the Shutter Mountains. That's where they'll go. And if they go past the forest to the south, I put the Frozen South. It's the Frozen North, if you look in like the region map in the second printing of Frozen in Time. But what does it matter? It's going to be the Frozen South now. If I wanted, I could just swap where the swamps are and where the Frozen South is and do that. But I already drew it, and makes it a little bit stranger. And the seas, well, I've never run Moon Slaves of the Cannibal Kingdom, so if my players go and start exploring the seas, that's probably going to be one of the places that they find fairly early on. In my little post, though, I put some extra options in there. Maybe past the mountains, it's not the Shutter Mountains. Maybe those mountains, they're blocking rain coming in from, out at sea, and it creates a desert past that. Well, for all of you who just got the Dark Tower in the mail, put a desert out there. Perfect place for it, and they can your players can be in this little region until they get high enough level to go do that big old dungeon. So, but you'll also see I notated a couple things on the map. I want to run the emerald. I've never the Emerald Enchanter. I want to run it sometime. So on my little map, I put little asterisks in there. In that adventure, it mentions there's a waterfall, and it's kind of cliffside. And if you look at the Emerald Enchanter Strikes Back, it places it somewhere near Herat from Doom of the Savage Kings. So I put it over there. In the handout we also showed a second ago, I also did my bad drawings of where rivers are. Because any town is going to need some kind of water source that might be in, some aquifer well. Could be, if you look at Well of the Worm, that seems to be it in that adventure. But most towns are going to have some kind of river going to it. Since I've got a sea, there's going to be some rivers, feeding into the sea. That's how it goes. Mine are not necessarily geologically sound, perhaps, my river placement, but I think they work well enough, at least for a fantasy game. So I did that. And then I wanted to just make it a little bit nicer. So let's look at handout 6. Handout 6, you'll see everything a little larger and with some color. That's just me grabbing some colored pencils from my son's room and going to town. And that is how I created my little 9 towns. It can be a good little region for your players to adventure in. I left one space blank so that, I could have that be a destroyed town if I want to have my funnel start that way, or it can be a town that I create later. I'm just leaving it open. It can be whatever. But that's a good little way that you can craft the region of 9 towns. and in a really simple way. And, when you're going through that, then you do maybe want to think about, what kind of random encounters you're going to have, what kind of rumors you're going to have. But having the towns there is going to help you do that. It's going to give the judge the information they need for when the players ask what's on the other, what's after the horizon. And again, if you think about kind of other adventures that you might want to dot around here and there. A lot of times you can just go, hey, and end of session, hey guys, what do you want to do next time? Something a little more investigative, something dungeon crawly, something sandboxy. What are you feeling? You'll be able to have the places that you need. And if you have anything that you're particularly interested in running, you can go, well, maybe it's kind of agnostic to where it's going to be placed in this region, but I can start supplying the rumors for that. And if they take the lead, they take the lead. And if they don't, they don't. But that is essentially how I do it. And again, dice on a piece of paper, and a few pencils, Sharpie to help you out. And I didn't even scan that in. I took a picture with my phone. So I used stuff that, maybe you don't have colored pencils in the house, but you can go pick them up for $1 or $2 at the dollar store. And you can make a little region with really just stuff you're already going to have lying around. And if you want, steal that one from me. A little higher res version you'll be able to grab is on my Substacks newsletter. So that's at dragonpeakpublishing.substacks.com, along with a bunch of tables that you can roll on for mountain adventures, deadly forest adventures, swamp ones, adventures you can stick anywhere, and some other suggestions for what to do when the players cross the border, go explore across the sea or across the mountains, whatever they might decide to do. I do see in the chat, when connecting towns and regions, do you have a general distance plan between them? It's a good thing to bring up. In the book, it just says, they're going to be fairly close. I would suggest roll. I'm going to keep it pretty easy, and just by easy, I mean simple for myself. I'm going to roll a D3. And that's how many days of travel it takes. If I feel like something should be a little longer away, I might roll a D7 or 2D3, and it's going to be that much travel time. And if I wanted, I might start dotting, some like minor settlements. Like I said, those roadside inns, and inn might be a strong word for it. Might just be, yeah, everyone. There's that guy over there, or that little family, and they'll let folks sleep in their barn if they help out with farm chores for a day, or pay them a bit of coin, something like that. Sometimes it can be an overnight trip, because if you think about when you're going and trading goods, a lot of time trade goods, people are just staying in town and they're exchanging with their more immediate neighbors. But if you're going further away for a big market day in one of the central locations, one of the more central towns that has 2 or 3 connections to it instead of just one, and it's they're a little closer together. So in the little map I showed, like Turney and Sturgeon and Georgetown, they're all pretty close together. And Portnell is going to be a sizable port, so they're going to get stuff. You're going to have to think about the how are these goods going to expire? What are those routes like? How dangerous are they? And from Sturgeon to Portnell, it might just be 5 days of travel, but you have to cross over the river, and there's that bridge there, and there's usually the toll takers. Turney to Sturgeon, there's a shorter distance on the map. Maybe it's only 1 day, and but again, you have to cross some sort of bridge. Maybe the town, those 2 towns work together to take care of that bridge and make it so there aren't some, kind of more malicious toll takers. So maybe there's a short and costly or dangerous route, and a longer, safer one. As I said, keep it simple. Just roll a D3, a D7, whatever you think is going to be good. And because a lot of the time, if you read appendix in stories, how long it takes to get from here to there, it's happening at the speed of plot. So you're just going to want to play through those highlights, and maybe besides that, take a 5 minutes to exchange some rumors with other passengers on the caravan. Have one random encounter, and then go on. The other 2 days are quiet. So, so just kiss. Keep it simple. That is my advice for overland trips and general distances. But this is going to be a short episode of Raw. Uh, Hope you all enjoyed it. If there's no last questions from chat, thank you for the questions there were. I hope everyone enjoys that. My little bit of advice, and in a couple weeks we will get back to our regularly scheduled Raw with Matt, my wonderful co-host, here once again, and along with a wonderful mystery guest that Matt is preparing. So, without further ado, y'all keep rolling dice, keep being kind to each other, and if you're going to GaryCon, just have a good time. Stay safe.